Welcome to the future. Prepare to immerse yourself with the key creators in the world of Web3. It's time to get excited. The Credit Metaverse podcast.
In Web3, I finally found my home and my calling. I love this space, and I built my own project in this space with a couple friends. In 2021, that project was called CryptoPets. It grew from $550,000 in market cap to over $200 million in 3 weeks. It was one of the fastest growing GameFi projects of its time. We had about 70,000 holders. And today, now kind of working off of that, just taking all that knowledge, experience, just running a project and putting in all the time and hours and energy into that, just taking all these key learnings and helping other people, enabling their success is what I'm passionate about today. So I work primarily with Web3 founders, specifically just helping projects spin up their idea and just give them direction from all the pains I've been through.
Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another Credit Metaverse podcast episode. Today we will talk about community building and growth with our special guest Tony Drummond, established Web3 expert. Welcome Tony, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing, by the way?
Great, Carlo. Thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very nice. Could you please introduce yourself for the start and just a little bit about your background and stuff?
Sure, yes. I've been in crypto blockchain space since 2021. I bring about 20 years of traditional business experience before that point in sales, marketing, operations, technology, just a variety of roles. In Web3, I finally found my home and my calling. I love this space, and I built my own project in this space with a couple friends. In 2021, that project was called CryptoPets. It grew from $550,000 in market cap to over $200 million in 3 weeks. It was one of the fastest growing GameFi projects of its time. We had about 70,000 holders. And today, now kind of working off of that, just taking all that knowledge, experience, just running a project and putting in all the time and hours and energy into that, just taking all these key learnings and helping other people, enabling their success is what I'm passionate about today. So I work primarily with Web3 founders, specifically just helping projects spin up their idea and just give them direction from all the pains I've been through.
Amazing. You have a lot of experience and really great success with your previous GameFi project. By the way, could you tell me a little bit more about how NFT space and Web3 technology affected the community building in comparison to what it was before? Like, did it boost how easy it is to build a community internationally, etc.?
Yeah, so my vision on that is, before we had all this NFT craze, we just had tokens, right? And that's what primarily sold out to the market, and people would find out about that, join the Telegram, and that's how they became part of the project's community initially, right? And then we had NFTs spin up, and a lot of them spun up and became profile picture projects. They were very overhyped, right? And the challenge I saw is a lot of them use community as the main value proposition. And that's first their kiss of death, right? Like when I think about today about building community, it all relates back to what is the value of what we're trying to actually sell, not just trying to overhype stuff, but bringing in real people who are a community who want to stick together. Like if you think about a community by definition, you don't see people just get up out of their house and move out right away. They stay there for years, they're involved, they're engaged, they meet other people. They're not just there to make money, right? And that's what I think the problem that's set in with communities and NFTs and these assets. Now the projects that have actually built real utility through storytelling, through people using these assets, there's a couple examples that are out there. Those are the ones that I kind of align more with, that I feel like will stand the test of time, and you've seen that. They've built a community with a value proposition, not just hype and floor price and mint and all this just to drive revenues, right? So that's my perspective of it, is I feel like now the landscape is going to move towards hopefully more legitimate players who are building things of real value and want to build a community of people who are in alignment with that value, who want to shape the product and be part of the shape of that product instead of just sit there to maybe a month down the road, sell the asset, move on to the next thing they're going to flip. That to me is the basis of which I view community.
You have a complete right in terms of that. By the way, could you name maybe a few examples that you see outstanding in terms of the not only community building, but also in terms of having a proper product, having a proper something behind all this community, and that kind of stands test of time? Like maybe a few of your favorite examples, and what do you find them doing well, and what do you see maybe them doing wrong, or that could be done better?
Yeah, I'm going to share just one really good one with you. So one of them is called Killer Bears. Okay. So they've been around since 2022. Last year, they minted out. They did a free mint, and right now their floor price is over 1 ETH. They have a huge ecosystem they've built out. But if you go to their website and you start going through their story, especially, you see a lot of richness in what they're actually building. Like they have the guys are from X gaming company. Okay. So they have actual characters in there. They have real storylines. They have enemies, and the villain that you're kind of, that's tied into the story. They have actual real storytelling through how people are using these assets as they progress throughout the story, right? And as they have new mints, how those assets also link together to help drive that story even further and help those participants participate in the value of that story as it unfolds, right? And when I look at something like that, that is how I personally see an NFT project, as it's supposed to be set up the right way. Like if people can buy those assets and be part of the experience, be part of a story, that's keeping them entertained. That's entertainment value, not just sitting there, hoping to flip the NFT someday. So that's a really good example of a project I personally love in our space right now. That's doing a wonderful job, and you can tell that in the fundamentals and what they've kind of set out. The future mints that they've done as well have been pretty successful too. And right now they have like an ongoing Killer Cubs is like the next thing they have out, where they enabled past participants who own like the OG bears to scan them to get traits, to use those traits, sort of like a Build-A-Bear type thing, where they could build like their own cub with this. And they have like a Cubrio that has to enter incubation for a certain point in time. And there's all this gamification and richness in there that uses all of the prior assets. And something like that, even assets that maybe were open editions that maybe don't have as much use now, they have a burn market for people to even use those. So when I think about a project like that ties all these assets together into a real story, although it doesn't have a video game or anything like that, the way they communicate it is you're in the video game already. You're part of the story, and you're using the assets in the game itself, and the game is a story. And so that's a great example of a project that doesn't have a video game that still can be very successful through just quality branding, quality storytelling, quality community building, quality marketing. Okay, so that's what I wanted to throw out there.
Awesome. And could you tell me one example of some project that was having, let's say, a very good perspective, but didn't work out for some reason, for some mistake that could have been avoided? And maybe if something comes to your mind.
Well, I don't like to speak bad about other projects since that cannot be good, but I'll just share with you like a common fail point I see. Whether it's an NFT project or whether it's a token project, it's really a lot of failures boil down to lack of planning, okay, not having a clear execution plan, not understanding how to build real value for holders, and then not having a good marketing plan to communicate that value proposition and bring the right base of people. Okay, those things combined normally lead to significant failure. Like, for example, if I have a project with no utility, but I have great marketing, a lot of times it won't sell it because nobody's going to buy it, right? So all these things like have to tie in. So I don't want to bash a project, but there's plenty of failures out there. And truth be told, the market conditions also are probably hitting a lot of these projects really hard as well. So I'm personally of the belief that we're all making this up as we go. You're going to make mistakes when you run your project, just as I've made many mistakes as I've ran my project. Nobody here is without scar tissue. If you built a project, my body is riddled with it right now at this point. And so really that's the mindset I want to have. And just, if someone's listening to this, like, what mistakes can I avoid? Look back at the projects that have failed, understand why they have failed, and then try and prevent those issues as you move forward in your project.
And how important are, let's say, tokenomics in terms of success for a project, and how many times we've seen the issues with the tokenomics and how it could be avoided? What are the key things that should be kept in mind in terms of the tokenomics? Let's say 5 key points that you would point out that everyone should have in mind when thinking tokenomics.
Okay, now this is an area I can go really deep into. I'm going to start off with point number 1 is looking at the market cap that you're going to start with. Okay, how do you launch your project at a reasonable, fully diluted market cap for what the value is of what you're building? For example, if you have an application with not a whole lot of users and it's going to take you a while to spin up, do not start at a $50 million market cap, because that's not going to be good. right? Because you don't have enough volume to send that upwards. You're really going to struggle, really struggle. So that's really a mistake, is projects launching too high a market cap. Another one is having too many allocations that link back to private or seed investors. Okay, and the reason why I'll say that is, for example, and I'll go into this, just the next step here is, for example, if I have tokens that release, well, what's the value of those tokens, different market caps, and what if those people who get them sell? What happens to the value of the token? Oftentimes, you'll find that the liquidity pool, there's not enough liquidity to support the selling pressure, and that destroys the price. That's why you see a lot of play-to-earn games fail as well, is eventually the liquidity pool runs dry, there's nothing left, the price is worth zero, okay? So that's a failure point. Now, when I go back to liquidity, this is another major failure point. When the project is starting off, let's say its fully diluted market cap is $10 million. Well, in my eyes, I want to see about $1 million net liquidity pool. Okay, and there's a reason for that, is because when projects start off with significantly less, like you've seen Ben.eth, all his plays, they have no liquidity in there, okay? And he's manipulating the pools right now to maintain that level, okay? Now, with that being said, that's the wrong approach, because eventually that'll run dry, you have to put in more money and continue to manipulate, okay? So, but if you don't have adequate liquidity, what you're going to have in the market is, of course, a lot of volatility, and that's because of the way these decentralized exchanges work. All of them are primarily Uniswap V2 or V3 forks, and those are going to have their own calculations that are going to be applied when the swap actually occurs for the actual token. Another issue is looking at vesting schedules. For example, you do not want to start off at a small circulating market cap, then go right away to a really high circulating market cap. Okay, the reason for that is that's inflation that's setting in. When new tokens are coming out into the market, that's going to inflate the circulating market cap. If that goes up too aggressively and people start selling off that are getting those tokens, that will destroy your value, because you have to bring in enough buying volume to counter that. Okay, now that I've explained all these, let's say we have a high market cap project that's $10 million. We have $100,000 in the liquidity pool, like the Ben.eth. He has 20 million fully diluted with like 50K in liquidity pool. Okay, nothing. Now, when you start off with that, it's easy to kind of move that market, right? Manipulate that market. But as the price increases and it goes up, it's also easy to manipulate it back down when selling pressure comes in. So you end up with really extreme volatility. Now, if you think about from a user perspective, if they're holding an asset that has value and we want them to use that value in our platform, do I want to wake up today and see I have $100 and then wake up tomorrow and see I have 25 because of crap liquidity fundamentals in the projects all over the place? No. That's a horrible user experience. And granted, yeah, it could go up. I could be excited by 100 turned into 200, but there will be red days. And when those days come in, the volatility is going to be created due to the lack of liquidity and the bad project fundamentals. Okay, so hopefully that covers some of the top 5 points, but I can go for hours on this.
Thank you. It was a very good insight. And yeah, I mean, we're kind of still, the whole space is kind of relatively new, and a lot of people are still learning what the best ways are by simply trying and failing and trying and failing. But yeah, the people like you that passed through those certain pain points, and you already gained experience on what works, what doesn't, and such insights can be very, very useful for a lot of new entrepreneurs, for a lot of new projects that are coming up. And yeah, completely agree. But now I would like to, yes, please.
Let me hit on that, because you just hit on something I felt was pretty sharp. Okay, so when you mention, all right, I'm learning from my project, yes, but what I also explain is I'm looking at other projects that are live in the market right now. Like I literally go into PSYOP and I look at the liquidity pool. How much does it have in it? What's the selling pressure? How is it maintaining its price like this? You must be concentrating that very tight in that price range. I'm looking at these fundamentals. I'm not just going off of my personal failures. I learn off of everyone else's failures as well. And that's exactly how you want to be thinking. So you could go right now to projects that are going to launch tomorrow and see how their fundamentals play out. Do they have enough liquidity? How much did they have? How much buying pressure they have? How much selling pressure they have? Do they airdrop? What happened to the chart? You know, looking at these fundamentals can drive tons of insights, and that's how I get my information, is actually observing things like that in the market today.
Yeah, I think it sounded wrong, but overall, yes, a lot you can learn from the stuff that is happening, and just by analyzing what's going on in the space from day to day. And by the way, I would like to come back to the pretty much community growth and building, and maybe you could tell me a little bit more about what are the most effective ways of building a community from the scratch. That's one of the things that probably you also might have a lot of experiences. You mentioned that your project had a lot of users and stuff like that. So I would like to kind of see your kind of suggestions and advices for the people that are just starting, and how do you start actually? What do you focus on when you're starting in terms of the community building?
Okay. Yeah, so in the very beginning, the very first thing I personally think about is what's my vision for my community, okay? And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They just want a bunch of people to sell tokens to. Well, think about it. Who do I want in my community? Who are these avatars? And I literally break this out, like give them a name, location, pain points, where do they go in for information, what are they searching for, who, just looking at it like any other business, how do I bring in my ideal customer profile into my community? Because if they're in there and what I have is relevant to them, they're going to be a community member. A community member is not someone just sitting there looking to flip a price. Those are traders. A community member is someone who comes in every day or whenever they feel like it and enjoys being part of the community to help the product, to work with other people in the community. So first of all, that's the starting point, is who do I want in there? And then furthermore, what are they going to talk about in the community? And I know we were touching on this briefly before we kind of started here, but what I really think about is now relating back to those pain points, linking all that back to what I talk about in the community. Now what I'm speaking about is extremely relevant to the exact audience I'm trying to reach. Like, for example, just take my business, for example. We mentioned tokenomics. Well, if I have a community of people that are struggling with tokenomics and I do a weekly tokenomics workshop that they can attend for free and learn about how to set up their tokenomics and everything, well, that's really phenomenal for my community. And people are going to start saying, hey, you got to join this thing with Tony, right? And you got to see this. If they're a fit, they'll start telling other people about it. And that's really at its core what I believe you have to think about. So they will tell other people about what it is that you're actually building. That starts with bringing in the right people. The next thing you have to think about is once those people are there, or when you're having them there, what's your plan to enable them to refer other people to what you're building? And how do you keep bringing that up so they remember to do it? Okay. So that's a big part of this process as well. So, because if you can bring in, like, look at it like a little field of dandelions, if you will, little weed flowers, how you say it with where you're from, your native language, but those things eventually turn white little seeds, they spread, and then they turn into more dandelions and more dandelions and more dandelions, and that keeps happening. And then before you know it, you got a whole field of weeds, basically, from all that growth that's happening from just the spreading of the seeds. So how do you think about that, and how do you incentivize people to bring in other people, whether it's a referral program, affiliate program, ambassador program, if they're really popular? So that's what I personally start with in the very beginning, is those fundamentals. Who's going to be there? What's going to make them keep coming back? And why might they want to keep coming back to that? And then how can I incentivize them to bring in friends, family, and relationships and bring all that together? That's really the starting point. Now, from a marketing standpoint, that's a lot of this is going to go back to your marketing agency, who's going to have to find ways, whether it's through influencers, press releases, whatever, PR, it doesn't matter. But the whole point is, you have to find out how you can reach the intended audience as best as possible. That links back to those avatars and those pain points. Because again, we want to bring in the right people first and foremost. And if we can do that, then here's the next thing I think about. Now, if I can have a captive audience here that's coming in, what's their first experience like with me? For example, I'll just give you a quick example. When people came into my community, for example, Carlo, you came in and said, hey, Carlo, great to see you, man. Welcome to CryptoPets. A pleasure to talk to you today. How can I help you? You know, so if you hear that from the CEO, what does that in your mind communicate? That person's involved, they're engaged. This is a different community experience, right? Because a lot of times you don't even see the people that are active, right? So we want to think about perception. And then when that new member joins in, where do they go next? Do they go to our Discord? And do they look through a sea of disorganized mess to find out about the project? Or they look at exactly where they want to go to in a clearly organized channel just for them that shows them how they can get up to speed right away and what the project is. So I hook them into the community, okay? So the first step is really taking this rented audience, if you will, from all the marketing activities out there, bring them into the community, which is your own audience, and then keeping them there through engaging with them directly, enabling them to make friends within the community. And that's making them more sticky. Okay. And then from there, the next step is to think about, now that I have this captive audience of people here, how do I monetize and convert them so they can become my customer base or my monetized audience? And then that requires a completely different skill set. For example, you might have to have a weekly voice chat where you're sharing new feature updates about what you're building, and maybe you have some soft selling in there to help get them excited about future features. But the main thing is, a lot of projects look at this as just hyping up, and that's one way to build a community of great traders. And that's why a lot of projects die today. We have to build a community of real people who love what we're building. Because again, the community is not traders. They're people who love what you're building and are passionate about what you're building. That's a community of raving fans. So that's just my simple viewpoint breakdown.
I have recognized that this exactly last part about the traders and the community, the difference, and actually seen a lot of projects that have actually been really growing fast, but it all seems that they only had traders. People were only there for the hype and kind of came there, flipped, and that's it. Bye-bye. They didn't really care about the project. They didn't really care about anything. And very often also, like you said, like people behind the project are usually not having time and not actually committing time to actually engage with community, to actually take care of them. And I can tell for sure that it makes a big difference when you actually see that someone behind the project actually cares for you, not directly for you, but for the community overall, and that is responsive and willing to assist. So yeah, very, very good insights and very good things you said so far. I would also like to ask you one thing in terms of the, for example, marketing that you touched before, in terms of the influencers, in terms of the PR. Like, could you tell me more about what your insights are in terms of what is the most effective way, or is it always from project to project different? Like, what is more effective to get the outreach to grow your Web3, let's say, user base?
Okay, so for me, there's a couple pathways, to do this. So for us, we went with a lot of the traditional advertising route. We did a lot of like CoinMarketCap trending and stuff, which obviously is expensive when you do that. But that is how you we brought in a lot of awareness to these activities. Now, what I see a lot of projects doing these days, even back when I was running my project, is leaning towards influencers. Okay, so I'm going to lay out a strategy for working with influencers, because once you understand this strategy, you'll rarely get screwed. Okay, I'm going to lay this thing out here. So what I like to do is, first of all, let's identify and think about our target audience again. Okay, if I'm going to hire an influencer, is my target audience actually following them? Okay, because if they're not, then what am I doing? I'm bringing in the wrong people again, right? So if I can do some research and find that these 10 influencers who have a collective audience of 500,000 followers that are actively engaged, and I'll tell you how to check that in a second here. Now I know that my promotional activities, if I convert a certain portion of that audience, could get me a specific result. I can actually drive KPIs off of that. So that's how I like to think about this stuff. I don't like to just dole out a bunch of money to a bunch of random people trying to hype up a project. I like to look at the fundamentals of their audience. Are they actively engaged? Okay, so what I'll do with that is I'll go on literally on their Twitter profile and I'll look at the influencer and I'll see how many times per day do they post. For example, are they going to do a post for me that I'm going to pay them $1,000 for? They'll just get buried 2 minutes later because they're posting nonstop projects. Like Crypto Messiah is a great example of it. Look how many times that guy shills a shitcoin each day. You know what I mean? It's all the time, right? You see it stream out constantly. Those projects probably aren't going anywhere, in all honesty, okay? Because he's shilling a new thing to the same people. They only have so much money. That's the thing you got to think about, right? So I want to find somebody who isn't doing that, who is less frequent. When they do post, their engagement is on fire. Like if they do a post, and I see 100 comments, 200 comments, whatever it is in relation to the follower count doesn't make logical sense. If I see somebody with 100,000 followers, they got 2 comments, no bueno, garbage. So I'm looking at that stuff really closely. So I'm not just following whatever somebody tells me or whatever the marketing agency gives me a list and hiring all these random people. That's what I would do, is actually look at that. Then what I would do next is actually check the timestamp of whenever that tweet. Even when you go on Instagram where it says 8W, for example, for 8 weeks, you can right click that, go into inspect in Google Chrome, and you can see the actual timestamp with the date and the actual time that was posted. So you can actually check that. And I look at that, and then what I do is I go back to the chart. Did anything happen? Okay, because I'm not going to pay someone $1,000 for nothing to happen. okay, no matter how great they claim to be. So what I'm doing then is I'm actually doing research to identify influencers who actually have influence and move a market and have done so statistically over time. Now I know I'm finding the right people from an influencer standpoint. Now I have data to leverage. For example, this influencer posted 10 projects in the past month. The projects did this amount on average, and it actually looks like the projects were successful, and it looks like the prices pumped up, and it looks like the influence actually worked. All right, and they have a lot of comments, likes, engagements, whatever. That's someone I'm going to reach out to and consider doing business with. Okay, that's how I personally look at that strategy. So that's how I would look at all of my marketing strategies. So I would look at other projects, what they're doing, what's working for them, not to steal their marketing, but to look at what's working today in our space in marketing. That's really important, because what you're doing today has to work. You can't just use what worked a year ago, because now it's different times, right? Different conditions, different perspectives of people. Some people might be down significantly right now. They might be up a little bit because they bought the dip maybe. Now they have extra cash, right? So just thinking about all this is really important as you line out your marketing. So it's my thought process there.
Who are your favorite Web3 influencers, if you have few maybe that you can name and say that are doing really a good job in terms of quality content and
I'll just tell you straight up. Since the token and market has pretty much gone down, I've never been much of an influencer guy to follow, to be honest with you. So I as a person probably buy about 5 projects a year, if that tells you anything. So I look for great opportunities. I put my money in and I wait. That's what I do. And I've only put in $2,500 into this market since time has started. I built everything off of it. So that's how I personally work. The thing I will say is the reason why I'm doing that is the influencers I've seen out there, largely, they're just promoting a bunch of shitcoins and things I don't agree with. I feel like a lot of the legitimate projects are holding back a little bit because of the market and they don't want to risk it. And that's why you don't see as many legitimate projects coming out. So that doesn't mean I think all influencers are no good. I just have not found any that really align specifically with my views, because I might see a project they like, then the next day they're shilling a shitcoin. That's going to go nowhere. They're shilling a China coin or something like that. That's garbage. That's garbage. It's going nowhere. You know what I mean? And so that's, I just say it. I don't have anybody to give you, really.
All right, fair enough. By the way, what is your vision on where the NFT space is heading? We have this craze in 2021, but will this continue? Are NFTs still gonna stay as one of the major things, or are we gonna see in the next bull run some other trend emerging? What is your opinion about that?
Yes, I think NFTs will stay, and the reason why I'll say that is because NFTs are a technology, right? We've bucketed NFTs into a profile picture or something like that, largely in this space, but it's not the case. An NFT is just simply a token that sits on the blockchain that it just so happens to have metadata that it links back to that have the picture in it, right? That's not even stored on chain. So when I think about NFTs as the technology, that there I'm really excited about. Not just when it looks like in gaming and things like this, because I know that's a big part of your market, but I look at everything such as, even when I look at cannabis, for example, I have one client that has, they have a seed to sale tracking system, right? So if you imagine, if in the future we have transaction fees that make sense and we can get the speeds up, as we know that's happening. It happens as time goes on, things improve, right? Now, if that provider had a way to have that, immutable asset basically sitting there that represented the actual plant, like we talked about seed to sale, have to track the entire plant life cycle. Now I can have an NFT that's linked directly to that plant. I could follow it everywhere throughout the blockchain. That's what I'm excited about into the future, is actually using that technology for what it's meant to be for. Where somebody modifies a record or something that links back to that, how can I check that? How can I see who did that? Right? That's what I personally love about the technology. Now, when it comes to gaming, I'm especially excited about that, because I view all these game assets, like before we joined this, I shared my own story about losing my game assets, and from a value standpoint, you're done with your game, you leave the game, your assets are worth nothing. You can try and sell them, but you're essentially a black market participant in a lot of cases if the game doesn't have a real marketplace, or you risk getting scammed. And so when I think about the value that can be created through actually having, an NFT asset that links back to some kind of a game asset, that's when I get really excited, because I feel like, and I know the gaming market is massive. It's projected to be about 200 billion in 2023. Okay, think about that. So now to take that market size and say we have a technology that's actually solving real problems. Like for example, my kids play Roblox and they have a pet simulator game where they get their pets. Well, somebody actually hacks the game and dupes a pet. Then they trade with that good pet to try and get it. And later on, Roblox catches the dupe and then kills it from their inventory, and the scammer took all their stuff, right? Well, if this were an NFT asset, we would know in the trade window whether it's validated based on this linking back to the contract address and being a real asset on the blockchain, right? And furthermore, when that asset was created, it would have had to go through some kind of a mint function process to be made in the very first place. So when I think about things like this is when I get excited about the future of the space that we're building. I believe it'll be less about profile pictures. Those will exist, without a doubt, but I think it'll be more about real world assets. Also, how gaming assets and things that are digital assets can drive real value. Also looking at brand value and loyalty programs and things like that. I see a ton of value there. So that's primarily where I like to think about NFTs. I've always been less about profile pictures, more about real business utilization.
Very good points. By the way, now when we're talking about gamify a little bit, one thing that is kind of questionable for me is that NFT space and let's say gamification in Web3 environment kind of requires usually a much higher budget than you would normally. Not you or me, we are in Web3 space, so for us it's kind of normal. But for a conventional gamer, let's say that is kind of coming to the project where kind of to do anything, he kind of needs to spend $100 or $1,000 to kind of not just to start playing the game because free to play started already, right? But in Web3 environment, you can't really give too much rewards as a game to a free to play user because you would simply inflate and kind of destroy your tokenomics, because you would simply invite a lot of bot networks that would kind of dry your game completely and destroy the complete model. So how do you see this gap kind of closing where those standard conventional gamers are not really attracted to putting maybe thousands of dollars into something that they are just starting because they have been playing the games that they spent once $5 or are spending maybe $10 a week or whatever, in comparison to the new requirements in the Web3 environment where they kind of need much higher budgets, which are again acceptable to the crypto fam because traders, etc., they are trading thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, so for them it's nothing to put 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 into a gaming project just to test it out. But for a conventional person, what do you think, how it will close to be able to even grow the numbers? Because we have noticed that the best performing games in the Web3 environment are still lacking in terms of number of the user base, and I'm wondering, will this gap be closing anytime soon?
Yeah, that's a great question and point. Definitely really in depth to think about. Now, one thing I just want to highlight that I've personally kind of been speaking with others out there is that have actually built games before, like before this space, is so many people now are trying to build a game. It's hard to build a game. And a lot of them don't even know how to build a video game. Okay, and so they're starting for the very first time building all this stuff. And so what I'm getting at here is I believe in the future, we will see companies who actually have historically built games that are going to be using this technology. They're going to get it right because they know how to price assets that people want to buy. They already have the data on kind of the consumers, and it's not going to be as much of sort of like this early trading market. Like right now, the games that exist out there largely, a lot of them are no good. You know what I mean? That's largely most of them. So when we think about this, my viewpoint is the game companies that come in here, they're going to have to think about the initial user base. What can I spin up that might even be low cost or free to let people get into the game? And then when they bring in these assets here, how can they continue to play the game and actually build up the value of that asset? Okay, so maybe, although they don't have to spend $1,000 on something, can they put in their time and make it get there? Okay, so you could either spend your money or you can spend your time. Which one do you want? People like myself who are used to this space where maybe $1,000 isn't a lot of money to me. Now, if I really want this character for this game, and I know that the value of it is traded sideways for a while, and there's not really a whole lot of risk in spending my money and getting that asset, I might be willing to buy that, right? And take the risk on it because it might even go up, right? And so that satisfies all parties' kind of needs. But I feel like for a game to really scale, the problem exists when you just try and price all your assets out of reach for everybody. Of course, nobody's going to be able to get into it. And when you price your assets in such a way that random traders set up the price and limits the access of your actual user base, that's also a risk. So I feel like games will still need kind of a low cost, low barrier free way to get people interested. And the reason why I'll say that is I personally, unless I see a trading opportunity, would not buy a game asset for a game I've never been able to even try, right? So I feel like if there's nothing I can get into and at least try for free and spin this up and maybe even have a free pathway to get something of value, that's going to close off a huge user base. And once I bring in those users, now I can focus on converting and selling them the actual assets, right? Like maybe they get their first weapon that's an NFT that costs, $25. That was a little bit rare, and they're like, wow, actually I spent $25 on this sword, and after a month it's worth $40. What else can I find, right? Like giving people that way that they can slowly get in, I think is the right way to bridge that gap instead of they just walk in right away. Your wallet is like open, you're funneling all this money out. That's not a good game experience. The last thing I want to say is the play to earn. I speak with a lot of venture capitals and a lot of my work as well, or projects raising for venture capitals especially, and I've attended over 100 pitches last year alone. When people say play to earn, that's a major red flag. And the reason why I'll say that is because of all the problems that have happened in the market due to the Ponzi-nomics and the play to earn space. So now you see a lot of people saying play to own for that reason. Okay, that's where I feel the future mentality will be. I'm owning this real asset instead of just how many players can I bring in so I can give them a whole bunch of tokens so they can sell the crap out of it. As you scale, and I've actually built a sustainable reward system for my play to earn game. As you scale your selling pressure. Then not very smart. You know what I mean? So if you want to have 100,000 users in 3 months, and today you have 10,000, you're giving out tokens to users, best of luck. Your whole price is going to be destroyed through that if they sell. So anyway, that's how I like to think about this stuff.
Very good insights. By the way, I would also like to hear your opinion about one topic that is kind of hopping on my mind always. Between the gaming experience, what the games used to be. I can tell you for myself, right? When I was always liking to play games and enjoy them, and that's kind of you spend time to enjoy the game, to have this virtual experience, whatever, escape from the reality for the time being into some space game or whatever it is. But when we come to the Web3 environment where we are actually trading, selling assets, and kind of giving the value to your time spent into the game, which before you didn't have, you couldn't sell your assets unless you're diving into the black market, etc. But nowadays, a lot of people see it more as a work because money is involved. So it's not anymore as much for fun. So how we're gonna close this issue that people are still gonna enjoy it for the gaming purposes, for the enjoyment purposes, and put their time and money into the Web3 game for the fun of it, and not for the earning point of view or for the point of volatility. Will I lose? Will I win the money actually? This kind of difference between enjoyment of the game, like play the game, or actually work, because it kind of becomes a work when you talk about the earnings, etc. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, my viewpoint is completely this. I'm struggling to think of one Web3 game I can get in right now where I'm like, wow, that's a wonderful game. Really well done. Great story, great graphics, great development behind it. You don't really see it. And that's what I feel like trading is all they have, right? That's what they have left. So when I think about like what really sucks me into a game, like for example, let's say Elder Scrolls came out with an NFT collection. That freaking thing would sell out in seconds. It would be gone instantly. They came out with something for Elder Scrolls Online or something like that, or World of Warcraft came out with something, gone in seconds. Why? Because the player base is there, they're engaged, and they're going to keep playing that game, right? They've been playing it for about 20 years right now. Elder Scrolls, over 20 years, the series. So when I think about the games that, if we won't want people to just trade the asset, Then we have to create a really engaging and fun game, which should be the point in the very beginning. And I feel like in this space, and I'm including myself in this mix as well, because my game isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread either. It's a simple running game, right? That's our project. We had a lot of stuff we were building towards, and that was just one of the deliverables, right? But anyway, all this stuff that comes out, but people are still playing this running game. Like, for example, I have a raffle, and just a few months ago, I saw people have 3 million tickets they bought off the raffle from things they actually collected inside of the game. So people are still playing the game a lot, right? So they still obviously enjoy it. And they're not just doing that to take the raffle. They're doing it because they like to compete against each other. We have leaderboards, we have status, things like that. But anyway, if you can't build a fun game and your only hope is then trading, don't be surprised if that's all you have is a bunch of traders. So I feel like the way games are designed and spun up today in our Web3 space is jaw-dropping in the time and energy and emphasis put into it. I joined one project before that supposedly had all these games underway. All of them were paid in full. Nothing was progressing anywhere. It was a complete disaster. And eventually I left that. It was really bad. So when I look at even the projects today that are claiming all this stuff that they're going to build, it doesn't happen. And so that's why my philosophy is we need companies that know how to build really good games to come in here to do it. That way the assets actually have value because people are playing the heck out of the game. There's real demand. The demand is from the players, not from traders. That's my philosophy.
Thank you for all the insights today. And I would like to actually ask you one last question. And that would be could you share with us one of your anecdotes from the life or Web3 environment? That's one of the topics we do always with our guests on our podcast. So yeah, if you have something interesting to share with the viewers.
Yeah, not a problem at all. So, one thing I personally like to think about in this space is be very kind to each other, support each other, because you'd be surprised how small this space is. Like Carlo, we just met each other today. 2 years from now, you might be saying, oh yeah, I know Carlo. I might be saying that, or you might be saying, yeah, I know Tony, because that happens to me all the time. So that's the thing I would just emphasize with people is don't be a jerk. Maintain your reputation, because your reputation will follow you everywhere in this space. So when they hear your name, you want them to think good things, not bad things. Don't be a scammer, obviously. So all your actions are in alignment with who you want to be represented as your reputation in the future in the space. Because trust me, once you start progressing this space, and if your vision is to build something someday, all of that will come back to you. All of it will come back to you. And you want all that comes back to you to be greatness and to be passion, to be positivity. Say, oh yeah, I know that guy. That's a really good person that you have there. That to me is what I've seen really help me as I built my company, as I built my reputation in this space, is always like that. Never sacrifice your reputation.
Agree completely with your point. And I've figured also how the whole space is very small, and pretty much one day I hope that we will be again talking around and actually see on the, let's say in 5 years from now, despite the NFT space or Web3 environment overall, there will be a lot of new stories. And I hope to see you again, Tony, on our podcast in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for everyone who was hanging out with us, I wish you a wonderful day, and see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
We bring you essential conversations with the key creators of the new world of interaction and connection. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and join the conversation. See you next time on the Credit Metaverse podcast.